me see. They took my name, apparently, whoever, I was born on March the 28th, but my birth certificate says April 1st. Yes, that's terrible, isn't it? April 1st. And my mother said, you were not an April Fool's baby. But probably in those days, you know, I was born at home by a midwife, and they probably didn't take my birth in probably 4 days later. And
that was when it was officially recorded.
Right. And so my
So we celebrate her birthday multiple times every year now.
That's a good thing.
Lots of ice cream.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. But with your mother, so that'd be my grandmother, right? My Bachan. She told a story about how she got off the ship. I guess she was a picture bride. And my grandfather said, "You don't look anything like your picture."
I don't remember that.
She told me that story. Yeah. She was so mad. She almost got back on the ship. Went back to Japan.
So was it a good thing or a bad thing that she didn't look like her picture?
I think she was insulted. Yeah. Can you imagine that, right?
Yeah.
Someone looks at the picture and looks at you and says, "You don't look anything like your picture."
She probably took it as an insult.
Yeah. She had a great sense of humor, though.
But they got married.
They got married. And had how many kids?
Let's see. I had 4 older brothers, and my older sister and myself, and a younger brother.
So that's 8.
Well, my grandmother told my mother, she said, in those days, children didn't live. So many of them passed away. And so she said, have as many children as you can. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, 2 passed away. The 4th one passed away when he was only 4. Mm-hmm. And then I wasn't even born then. And my mother always said that I was reborn, because she always used to tell him, why weren't you born a girl? He was the fourth boy. And she regretted saying that, because he did pass away. He was such a sweet.
So you have 2 older brothers who died, right?
Well, no, not right away.
One died as a baby, and
just one died as a baby.
Yeah.
And then I had younger brothers. George's younger brother died.
Okay.
So there are two boys that died.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there were only 2 of us girls.
Yeah.
And we weren't raised together because my grandmother had 1 daughter and 3 sons. And I don't remember how she passed away, but that would be my aunt, passed away. And my grandmother never got over that because her only daughter had passed away. And so when I was a little tyke, and then my sister was about 3, so I must have been about a year old. My grandmother says, bring the girls back. All you do is send the boys back here.
To Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because eventually my father thought he would have to go back to Japan, being the oldest in the family, and take over family, whatever. And so my brothers were all sent over there. The second brother was so bad, they sent him back. and because my father's sister had passed away, the only daughter had passed away so young, and my grandmother wanted, all you do is send the boys, I want the girls. And so my mother said, okay, then we better make a trip over there. And my sister was just 2 years older than me, and she was only 3. And my mother said, she just couldn't leave me, I was still a baby. So she left my sister, And my niece was telling me that her mom told her she used to go back there every day waiting for mom to come back and get her. But she did come, let's see, I think my father brought her back here when she was about 18. Because during the war, it couldn't have happened.
So your older sister went to Japan and didn't come back for
Mhm.
how many years?
Well, she grew up there. She was there during the bomb, Hiroshima bomb.
Oh, is that,
She survived the
She
atomic
survived
bomb.
it, yeah.
is she the one you told me about?
Yes.
That ate the bad fish?
That was my uncle's wife who ate the bad fish. But her sister, her oldest sister, actually survived the atomic bomb in Hiroshima.
Yeah.
So she was a nurse's aide.
Well, she
In the
was
hospital.
she was upstairs, and when she went downstairs, she said people were like ghosts, just walking around, half dead. And I don't think she could ever forget that. It was very, I don't know.
Traumatizing?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I would feel traumatized.
Well, she told a story about after the bomb had hit.
Yeah.
She was a nurse's aide, so she's about taking care of people. They ordered everybody to walk to a cave because they thought it'd be safer if they were in a cave. And along the way, she saw this sick little girl who had been hit by the bomb, picked her up. I think she was about 8 years old or so, and she died in her arms.
Well, they were dying all around her.
Yeah.
People who were alive were almost ghostly because they were, I don't know if they were conscious really,
Yeah.
I don't know how that would feel, not having ever been in that position. But yeah, it was horrible, I'm sure.
But they also said they didn't let your sister go home because she was a nurse's aide.
Yeah.
So she had to take care of, the injured people.
How long did she have to stay?
I heard it was like a week or so.
I don't know the details, yeah. But
Did she stay in Japan after that?
Yeah, she was there until...
For another 2 years,
after the
maybe?
war. After the war, she wanted to come, and my father brought her over. But because she was raised over there, she had trouble with her. She couldn't speak English, and that was kind of hard for her. I think she would have been better off if she had stayed in Japan, because she knew the language and she could work and do whatever so much more efficiently. Where over here she lacked the language skill, and I think that was kind of a handicap for her. But she married a farmer, so she.
In Lincoln.
Yeah, in Lincoln, so she didn't need.
Yeah.
But
And they farm fruits.
But
right?
coming from the city,
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
you imagine coming from a city and then ending up on a farm? I'm sure it was pretty rough on her.
Yeah, she worked hard, that's for sure. Yeah.
And so what was you were raised here? So,
I was raised here.
and where did you go to school?
Marysville.
Marysville. Okay.
I was only in the sixth grade through the elementary school, and then when we went into camp, I was in the seventh grade, and they were all Japanese from 3 different states: Washington, Oregon, and California.
So can you tell the story of when you first heard of the bombing at Pearl Harbor?
Did I hear?
You were in Marysville, and you were watching a movie.
Oh yeah. Oh, we went to see Sergeant York I remember.
You remember that?
I remember the movie.
That was 80 years ago. That's pretty good.
Well, Gene and I went to see that Sergeant York, and then coming out, the paper boys were going, yelling out the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and that was the beginning of all our problems. From then on, it was just downhill for us. And I remember I don't know, I think Japan must have gone over to the Philippines and done some damage, because a Filipino man came after my brother, my oldest brother, with a knife, and he was ready to kill him. And things like that happened, and it was pretty scary. Didn't happen to me, but hearing it from him, Joe, he was the one that was attacked. Later I thought, oh my gosh, I think we're safer if we're removed from here, because I don't know how many more things would have happened. People were so angry. I mean, we had nothing to do with it, but we were Japanese, not born there, but I'm sure there's no other way to strike out at Japan. Probably, that was the way people struck out. And so I thought, well, at least we were in camp. It was nothing, we ate in mess halls. Families were not together as much. There were four, and there were barracks, and so I don't know how the barracks were built. And then the bathrooms were men's bathroom on this side and the women on this side.
Those were separate buildings, weren't they?
Yeah, they were separate buildings. Yeah. I mean, they're huge buildings. Each room did not have a bathroom. We did have a pot-belly stove for the wintertime. But that was the only, and then there were four in a room. My younger brother, my mother, father, my younger brother, and myself. And then we would go to the mess hall to eat. And
what were the bathrooms like?
No doors. And so I thought, oh, this must have been GI issue, because the showers were no doors, no separation. It was just, showers. And then the bathrooms didn't have any doors, and so I go way to the very last toilet, so nobody would come by me. But those were inconveniences, but I don't know, it was just wartime. And I even remember my address, 4706D. That's
your barrack number.
That was a barrack number. Yeah. And then there were about six rooms in a barrack, one on each end, and then four in the middle. And we occupied 3 because my oldest brother got married. And so, Joe and my sister.
So your family had half of the barrack then?
The middle, yeah. Mm-hmm. And my father, I don't know where he got the seeds, probably from catalogs. He knew that I loved tomatoes, and fresh tomatoes, and so he planted just small vegetable garden, like you do.
Following grandfather's footsteps.
I guess, yeah. And we just did the best we could.
I thought you were going to talk about your tomato.
Oh! One day I went out there and got a tomato, and I was going to bite into it. Here's this green worm looking at me. I thought you forgot about that. I remember going to the train station because we had relatives coming from Placer, going by and saying goodbye because we didn't know if we were ever going to see them again. And so everybody went by, and we were probably about the very last ones to be sent to camp. And so people were, the schools were way over here. And then the ones that got in earlier were closer to the schools. And we were way over here. And in the summer it wasn't so bad, but it would snow in the winter. I would have to go from, I was in the 7th grade. I'd have to go from here all the way over to the school. And the snow would melt. You know, the sun would come out and the snow would melt. And the thing would freeze, and it's ice. And icicles. Can you imagine icicles forming from the barracks? So it was very cold in the winter time.
So she was at Tully Lake. Yeah.
Yeah, which is northern California.
So you were allowed to bring one suitcase each?
Yeah, one suitcase.
So that meant your family had one suitcase each, right?
Mm-hmm. One per person.
Do you remember what your mother packed?
Yeah, she packed candy for us. She said, I don't know if you're ever going to be able to get any candy. My younger brother and I were so young then that she felt that we would miss that. And of course all the clothing and all the important things, but she did remember to do that for us.
She brought candy, yeah.
And we treasured it because when nobody had candy.
Yeah. You know, that is interesting because even, you know, on Dad's side, when they were in the assembly center, we have a record of my aunt asking the bank to buy some candy and to send it to the camp. Mm-hmm. And so the Bank of Stockton actually did that. They went to the local store, they bought candy, and they withdrew the money from their bank account and then sent the candy into the assembly center.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. The family's from Wakayama, Japan. He went to an international business, like a high school in Kobe, Japan. And then as soon as he graduated, he came over to the U.S. It turned out that he landed in America on April 18th, 1906, which is a very interesting day.
Yeah.
So April 18th, 1906 was also the exact day of the Great San Francisco earthquake.
Oh, the earthquake.
So he landed. Fortunately, he didn't land in San Francisco on that day. I think he landed in Vancouver and then made his way. But his ultimate goal was to come to San Francisco. So he came down to San Francisco shortly after the big earthquake. Started working there. He met a man named Sakayama, who was apparently a businessman. And I think together they plotted this whole idea of opening up a dry goods store. And so they ended up doing that in Sacramento. In here, we actually have one of the one of the receipts from the Sakayama business. And so this is here in Sacramento. So I believe my grandfather came here first to Sacramento, but then he was charged with opening up the Stockton store.
Is this Stockton, Sacramento?
Yeah, so there were two stores, one here in Sacramento, I think on 3rd Street, and then Oji-chan, my grandfather, opened up the Stockton store.
Oh, there's the address?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Yeah, so they opened it up on El Dorado Street. Yeah. And then shortly after that, it became the Tabuchi's department store. So M. Tabuchi department store. And so they occupied part of a building, and somehow that building became available for sale. And so Bank of Stockton approached our Tabuchi family, and they were offered to buy that. And so they purchased the building. the interesting thing about that was because of the Asian Exclusion Act, immigrants were not allowed to own property. And so they found kind of a loophole in that. They purchased the building through a good friend's son who was over 21 at the time. Mm-hmm. So the original deed was in the Endo family. And then when my aunt became 21, they changed the deed from their family into our family.
Mm-hmm. The oldest.
So they were able to own the building. So they owned this building, which Tabuchi's department store was part of that. And they had some extra space. And so one of the first tenants of that building was Alex Spanos and his family. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they had a bakery there. And I think we have a picture in here somewhere, but this is the original Sakayama store back in 1923. And you can see that it was a dry goods store. They sold everything from...
I think that's your mom. That's Obachan, isn't it?
That's Obachan in there?
Oh, no, it isn't.
Yeah, so it was clothing, but then there were also, I don't know what you call it, the actual material that's there. The fabric. So they did custom tailoring as well as all the upstairs you can see, luggage and all the different things that they sold there.
It's a big store.
It was a big store, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that was Tabuchi's department store, and they were...
And that's in Stockton.
In Stockton. The Tabuchi's department store did very well. And we have, tax records from 1938 that showed that they reported a net profit of, $8,000. And if you put that in context, I think you could buy a really nice house at that time for about $5,000 and a car for maybe $700. And so when you think about it, they were making a lot of money. Not only with the business, but also with the property and renting out space and so forth. So prior to World War II, the family was, I would say, very affluent. Maybe that's, what would you call that, upper middle class, maybe? They're doing quite well. And then the war hit. This is the newspaper that has the closing out sale.
Before leaving for camp?
Before leaving for camp. So it's April 3rd, 1942. And they were evacuated out in May. And so this is the actual advertisement that they put in. The words that they put in here, I think, are really important. I don't know who wrote this because, my grandparents were Japanese native speakers. It was probably my aunt that wrote this, but it's very eloquent. It's a closing out sale, and it says, after 25 years in business, M. Tabuchi is forced to retire from business. And it is with much regret that we must close our store. To our many friends and customers in Stockton and the San Joaquin Valley, we sincerely want to thank you for your past patronage and hope that again in the near future we will be able to serve you as in the past.
Yeah, that sounds
a great
like
deal
her.
of dignity in that.
It really is. Yeah.
That sounds like her.
Yeah, and I think they took the high road on it, but also there was also that sense of optimism, right? That again in the near future we will be able to serve you as in the past. And I think that's important because...
Well, we came back, but then we moved the store.
That was later on, yeah. Yeah. So that was liquidating all of the store's assets, and there was a story about that when they had to sell all of the goods, my father said it was like a den of thieves, so that people were coming in there and they were trying to devalue and get bargains and all of those things, and it was really degrading to have to go through that. At the end, they finally sold all of the contents of the store to somebody, and they made a deal for $10,000 to sell everything. They went to the lawyer's office, so my aunt and my grandfather went to the lawyer's office to finalize everything. and they were presented a check for $1,000. And they looked at it and they said, no, our deal was for $10,000. And the lawyer was trying to get them to accept a check for $1,000 instead. They wouldn't have that. So they didn't leave until they got a $10,000 check. And so I have the Stockton Savings and Loan Bank passbook that's here. And the significance of this is that this is from 1942, and it shows all of the deposits that they made, including the check deposit from Alex Spanos and for rent. And the very last entry in this is for $11,650. And that was on April 25th of 1942. So that's how we know the story about the $10,000 is true, because they actually did do the deposit here. But this was the end. So there are no more bank entries after that date, which means that at that point they were ready to go to camp. The Tabuchi family went to Rower, Arkansas. I should say before that they went to the Stockton Assembly Center, which was at the San Joaquin County Fairgrounds. The interesting thing about that is that they actually lived less than a mile from the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And so the fairgrounds were in their neighborhood, and so they had to evacuate from their house and almost walk over to where they had to stay in the assembly center. It was in the fairgrounds. There were horse stables that were there. I believe some stayed at the horse stable. I think they tried not to have them stay in the horse stable. But if you can imagine...
Well, they ran out of room.
Yeah, they ran out of room. Yeah.
So, yeah.
But being in a horse stable, there's urine and feces, and you could wash it down as much as you can, but you can never get rid of that smell, right? So they actually ended up staying there while the government prepared their facility at Rower, Arkansas. So one of the things that did was, when they first got to camp, they lined up with all of their goods and everything, and they were forced to wear these tags.
Yeah, everybody had tags on.
So this is my father's tag, Shoji Tabuchi. His English name is George, but he had a family name and all of that. And then on the back it says, okay, which means that they had passed inspection, which means they were looking for contrabands, guns and cameras and radios and things like that. But as part of this, they were forced to actually wear...
Yeah, we were not allowed to have cameras.
Yeah, because they didn't want you to document. So this is a picture of my father's family in Rower, Arkansas. And this is the only family photo that we have while they were in camp. And so this is my father here. And I can just kind of read through the lines, between the lines on this picture. There's a few things about it. One was that everybody was very well dressed, right? So my grandparents owning a clothing business, they had to be well dressed because it reflected on how prosperous the store was. So they were all very well dressed. And then my father's here in his t-shirt. And I'm sure they told him, make sure that you're here at this time because we're going to take a family photo. And he was probably off playing baseball or basketball or something, and finally they found him and told him to come back, right? So he's here in a t-shirt, and I don't think his parents are very happy, right? But there's also something that's very significant about this, in that if you look at the barracks in the back, so this was in front of their barrack, which became their home during camp. It's very well taken care of, and you can see that there is an overhang. So when it rained, the water didn't get inside the building. There's also window screens.
Well, this, I think they built it.
They built it.
Because my father did.
Yeah, so they had it built, so they had an overhang. They had a screen door, so they could open up and ventilate. They had screens on their windows. And then this is really important over here, which is they had a full stock of wood.
Well, you had to go get it.
Yeah, so they were ready for the winter. And
Because we all had pot-belly stoves right in the middle of the room.
yeah. So they were all set, and this picture just, it says it all.
I don't know if it snowed there, but it snowed in Tule Lake.
It did, in Arkansas.
Oh, it was so cold.
Yeah.
Oh, it was cold.
So yeah, they spent their time in Rower, Arkansas. One of the stories that my father told me was that my grandfather sat my father down while they were in camp, and he said, "Shoji, wars only last for 3 years." I don't know how he knew that, right? But he said, "Wars only last for 3 years. Get ready, because once we get out of here, we're going to build the store back better than ever." Right? So that was the optimism that they had. And I don't know how he predicted it, right? But World War II for America lasted for 3 years. And then they were able to get out. When they got out of camp, war relocations...
Well, that's right by the house.
Yeah, war relocations came and took this picture. And this is a picture of my grandfather in front of their house in Stockton. This is an interesting picture because...
They rented that while they were gone.
Yeah, they rented it out and were able to get it back. But again, they're very well dressed, right? They look happy. The expanded view of this picture is the garden was just a mess. Okay.
In the back.
They never had a messy garden. This front of the garden would always be immaculate. But war relocations took this picture, and they actually, I think they used it as kind of a propaganda thing, which was, look, they're back, they're home, they're happy and all of that. What they didn't get, though, was a couple months after this picture was taken, my grandfather became very sick.
Yeah.
He was vomiting blood. They knew something was wrong. They took him to Dameron Hospital, and the doctor said, "No, I'm not going to take care of you. You're Japanese." So they refused him treatment at Dameron Hospital. So they left there. They went to St. Joseph's, and there was a nun who said, "Yeah, we'll take you in." Right. And so they took him in. He was losing blood, and so he needed a blood transfusion. But there was no blood to be had because of the war effort. All the donated blood had been sent to the
Service.
To the service, yeah. Even though it was in 1945 at that time. So my father had a friend at the College of Pacific who was actually a blood match. And so he asked, would you donate blood for my father? And my father's friend was on the football team. And so Coach Amos Alonzo Stagg told him, no, you're not allowed to donate blood because we have a football game coming up on Saturday. So my aunt wrote up some memoirs, and she said it was harder to beg for blood than it was for money. And my grandfather died a couple of weeks after that.
No, I never knew your grandfather.
Yeah. Yeah, he died in 1945, and that was 4 months after they got out of camp. So he was only 59 at the time. Yeah. They were able to restart the store, though. So his whole vision and his dream did come true. And right around 1949, they reopened the store as M. Tabuchi Department Store on El Dorado Street.
That's before we moved.
Right. And then redevelopment came.
Yeah.
This whole redevelopment. And I guess it was a national move. But yeah, it hit Stockton as well. And so by eminent domain, they took over our Tabuchi family building. So I don't know what year it was because I was so young, but one of my first memories was when you took us
In the car. Yeah.
in the car.
And you said, that's our store.
Yeah, we went and saw the store. I remember sitting on your lap it's in our station wagon. As we're watching, the ball, wrecking ball,
Yeah.
just smash into the building,
Oh, he was so mad.
demolish the building. Yeah.
Do you remember how you felt?
No, well, he was angry.
I was mad. I was upset. I think I was crying.
That's our store.
Yeah. I was crying, and I said, I'm gonna build this store back up again.
He did. As he was.
You did?
Actually, I didn't. I worked at the store, but my older brother ended up taking over the store. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that was the pain of redevelopment. Of course, it was, taking over businesses, and everybody looked at, bright and shiny new buildings and all of those things. But that was the pain of it. It's like, I knew as a 3 or 4-year-old that our building was being demolished. And even at that young age, I knew that there was something significant about it. But that was me as a child. I mean, think about, my father or my grandmother who was still alive, seeing that happen. So there were 2 significant times that, not just the war relocation that happened and the internment, where the business and their freedom and everything got taken away, but then redevelopment hit again and took away that store. And so I know that happened in Sacramento and all over the place to the Japanese Americans. And for some, they never survived after World War II, so they never came back. In fact, Sakayama store in Sacramento, there's no record of it opening up again after World War II. So, and there's no even record of him coming back to Sacramento. And so, I don't know if he just gave up because of that.
Some people went back to Japan.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, my family was resilient. They came back 7 years later. The store was closed for 7 years, and then they came back in 1949, but then got closed down right around 67, 68, around there. Moved the store, and then they kept the store open until about 2000.
Well, and then too, the things that we carried were different because Dad was in the Air Patrol.
Yeah, yeah.
We had uniforms, police uniforms, sheriff's uniforms.
Highway Patrol,
Highway Patrol.
Postal, Fire Department. Yeah.
And I remember all that because I was doing the bookkeeping.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a lot of just innovating and creating business. I mean, it's very entrepreneurial, right? The store actually started, Sakayama and Tabuchi store started making tarps way back in the, 1917, 1920, right around then, because my grandfather recognized that out on the farms, the farmers needed to cover their crops, and so like walnuts, right? They needed to cover that so the birds wouldn't get them. And so he started making tarps, and they did good business that way. Until Montgomery Wards and Sears found out, hey, there's a business here, right? So then they started selling tarps. And so then, their family had so much material, they said, well, why don't we start making t-shirts or shirts, like work shirts? So they started making work shirts for the farm workers and sold those. So it's just this continued just entrepreneurial spirit of, find an opportunity, fill the opportunity, make some business, and do that. And that was kind of the story of the Tabuchi family, to be very entrepreneurial that way.
And have you continued that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm entrepreneurial in different ways. I I was able to go through in high tech. I was an electrical engineer, worked for 18 years, and then retired at age 42 on that.
You worked for Hewlett Packard?
Yeah, for Hewlett Packard, but continually, even when I was at HP, I was doing entrepreneurial type of work, continue doing that through the nonprofit work that I do today. My title that I've been given is Serial Social Entrepreneur. So creating new ideas and new businesses that really help out in society here. Yeah, and so that's kind of the story of the Tabuchi family. There's a lot of different stories to tell in between.
Well,
as
you
well.
were involved in a Mandarin.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember when you first started the Drum and Bugle Corps. It started in Sacramento.
Yeah, so Mandarin started in 1963 as a Chinese only.
Uh-huh.
And it was started by 4 fathers who wanted just a nice, wholesome type of activity for the kids. Because in '63, there was a lot of racism that happened, and the Chinese American kids couldn't do a lot of things that other kids did. So they formed the Mandarins, and so it was written into the bylaws that you had to be Chinese to be in there.
If you will.
So I went into rehearsal. I was invited to go practice with them.
Well, the other 3, one was Filipino Chinese.
Yeah, the other 2 were Chinese American.
Other 2 were, yeah. And he was the only non-Chinese.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't take. They said they weren't going to take him.
No, but the director called me out of practice, and he said, "So Tabuchi, that's not a Chinese name, right?" I said, "No, sir, it isn't." He said, "So your mom is Chinese?" I said, "No, she's Japanese American." He said, "You're not Chinese then?" I said, "No, I'm Japanese American." And he just said, "Shh, don't tell anybody." So I got snuck in there. Fast forward after that, and I ended up becoming the president and CEO of the Mandarins and did that. Yeah.
How did you and your husband meet?
Through friends. A very good friend of mine, a family friend, I had been I wasn't dating anybody special, but I was dating another fella too. And then he said, "No, pick him." The other one would have been tall, though. You would have gotten height. It's funny, yeah. But it's funny how things
Why did she
work
say
out.
pick him?
Huh?
Why do you think she said pick him?
Why did?
Your friend said pick him.
Well, it was a friend of his, Leonard Yamasaki. He was the one that knew both of them. Dad went to UOP, College of Pacific.
College of Pacific,
At the time. And then the other fellow went to Berkeley. And so this friend of mine knew this other fellow from Berkeley. And then because he was a family friend, I said, "Well, which one would you suggest?" And he said, "No, pick Shoji." I don't know why.
But you listened to it.
Yeah, I listened because he was like an older brother, and he knew me well since we were family friends from way back, from Marysville, and so that's how I became a Tabuchi.
How many years were you together?
Oh my gosh, how many years?
What year were you married?
54.
54. So Dad died in 2006.
Yeah. So that's how long we were married.
Yeah.
But we did a lot of traveling. He loved to travel. And the only country he wouldn't go to was Russia. He says, "We're not going to Russia." But we must have gone all over Europe, all over Asia, all over Australia, New Zealand, you name it, Hawaii.
South
Every
America,
year practically we were. So did a lot of traveling, which was nice. I was young enough, but I was still. I wanted to get back into school, and I wanted to go into accounting, and so here I'm taking my homework with me
Yeah.
everywhere I
Well,
go.
you got a computer science degree.
Yeah.
She got an AA in computer science from Delta College.
Yeah,
You were probably in
I
your
enjoyed
50s
that.
then.
And then had to write.
My high school friends were, when they went to junior college, were in her classes.
They'd come, what are you doing here?
Yeah. And they would tell me, they said, can you like distract your mom tonight? Because we have a final tomorrow. And she always gets the high grade, the high score on the test.
But I enjoyed it. It was really,
Yeah.
to me, it was fun. I mean, I didn't have to do, it wasn't like I was a younger person, student who had to get out and get a job and all that. And
So did I get my brains from you?
you said it, not me.
I'll take that.